It's all yours, Dr. Chair Jones.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Thank you all for carving out time in your schedules for us to connect as always. As we prepare to kick off today's meeting, the top thing on the agenda, so the first thing on the agenda will be the approval of the May meeting minutes. Then we will move into the draft report and the discussion of that with Dr. Rollins from our public engagement meetings. And then if anybody else has any other things that they want to put on the radar or on the docket for our next meetings, we can spend time discussing that to the extent that we have time, and then we will adjourn. So moving into the approval of last month's meeting minutes. Hopefully everybody has had an opportunity to look at those. Does anyone have questions, comments, items of discussion based on the May 20 meeting minutes? All right. Hearing none. So this is the part where I always get hung up. Do I have a motion to approve the May 20th community engagement meeting minutes?
I motion that we approve the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Brother Chris. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I got the second from Mr. Mike Nagel. All in favor of approving last month's meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, perfect, quick and easy. So moving ahead to the next item is the draft report from the community sessions that Dr. Rollins and his team were able to get out and conduct. Dr. Aaron, I see your camera's off. I don't know if you're available to talk right now or if we should have other discussions first. But if you are available, I'm happy.
No, absolutely, absolutely. How are you all?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you.
Pretty good. Good seeing you all. If I may, I'll start sharing my screen and we'll just kind of jump into it here. Share. So of course, you all, I can't see you all, so please feel free to just interrupt me. I don't know if you all can see me or not, but just stop me and we'll just kind of go from there. So first, I want to just kind of give you all a little backdrop, a little update on where we are, and we'll just kind of shoot right through it. So of course, for those everyone on this committee, I'm sure they've been up to date. I think most of you all attended most of the meetings. So great. First, I want to thank you all for that. It's always good to have individuals there to hear and to help us as we move forward. So we concluded the meetings about 2 months ago. Met with you all about a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember exactly. It was before my Hawaii trip. And I kind of had a little bit to share with you all. And I don't talk about why I shared and how I shared what I shared. So I initially shared after these meetings, after every meeting, there are a few things that happened that I want to talk to you all about. So after every meeting and during most of the meetings, and especially after, I stayed after every meeting and talked with citizens, talked with some of the individuals who were engaged. And also what I didn't share with them, but I'm sharing with you all now, I took notes. I took personal notes. So much of what I was sharing in the previous meeting, they were from my personal notes that I took. I would go home, have conversations. At some of those meetings, I know people like Mike stayed after with me to at least an hour and a half or so past the meeting. So what I shared with you all at the last meeting was from my personal notes. And it's about being, while this is not an official research project, I kind of wanted to treat it and follow many of the steps. I'm going to talk about those in just a second as a traditional research ordeal. Well, those meetings or the information I shared at the last meeting were from my notes. What I did since then is myself, my team, we worked tirelessly. We worked very diligently to go through the data, to comb through the data, to find general themes, to find the most pressing needs, and to figure out kind of what the citizens wanted. Well, I will share with you all, if you attended any of the meetings, you would know that they didn't always go as cookie cutter as I initially envisioned. If you remember, when I came to you all with an outline of questions. They were going to give us certain information and certain data. Well, and if you've done this type of work before, you know that things don't always happen the way you expect it to always happen. So I'm sharing that to say, because sometimes we will find information from one part, or to one of the questions that I shared earlier, we will find it in other parts of the data. So for example, an individual, I would say, what's the most pressing need? I would ask the question, and an individual would say, well, I work with this organization XYZ. This is early in the conversation. Well, I would ask them, if you were there, you heard me oftentimes ask them, hey, if you would save that to later, because I need that information later in the report. So I'm sharing that to say, so much of what we were doing was trying to find the answers to the question in the data. So it took a great deal of time. We're going to talk about that as we move forward. So the presentation tonight kind of goes from that step forward. So once we got the data clustered, then we start bringing the data to light. So of course, you all know this. Now, presentation is kind of for the general board, but I'll share with you all first to get your thoughts and input. But of course, you all know the purpose of this work and the purpose of this report was to help inform the board on the 2024 needs of the citizens affected or impacted by this new legislation, this new statute. And that's what we did. We asked the questions and we received the answers. Sometimes they were, as I said, cookie cutter. Other times they were a tad bit hidden in the data in other places. Of course, we went to all 9 neighborhoods and followed the schedule almost perfectly. I think we had one hiccup. Tornado kind of came in and canceled our final meeting, but we picked it up, I think, later that same week or later. And in the report, in the appendix, is an outline of how the meetings went. I'll just jump into the data if you all don't have any questions up to this point. Great, I don't think I see it. Okay, great, let's get going to it. So of course, so for this type of report, for this type of research, I used the focus group type research. And I want to share with you all, while you all can read the screen, I'll just keep talking. So this type of research allows you to go in depth and ask individuals and to cluster and hear multiple people talk about an issue or whatever the phenomena is, and get a more in-depth response than traditional survey data. So many of the reports that have been done so often are survey data. And let me tell you why this is a better approach, why I think this is a better approach to really get or dive deep into the data. So often individuals, particularly minoritized individuals, people come into their communities and they say, hey, you all need XYZ. Now you rank them. Well, I believe this type of research is better because the questions that were asked, the questions were simply, hey, what do you think are the most pressing needs? And almost I know at least 3 or 4 times people will say, well, give us some examples or give us this. And I would say, no. You tell us what you think the pressing needs are. And the reason that's important, because I did not want to prompt them. I didn't want to have this paternalistic approach as though I know what's better for them than they know what's better for themselves. So I'd always say, hey, no, you tell us what you think. And the way the data reads, and you're going to see in just a second, the data show how many times these pressing needs came up. So this is the type of research that we conducted here, focus group research. And this is a little more information about how focus group research is to be collected and or done. And I'm more than happy, and I do plan on sharing this all with you all at the conclusion. But you can see I share some key readings regarding this type of research. Let's keep moving forward here. Now I'm gonna stop my video and move you all down because I can't see the full screen. I see some of you all on here and I can't see my full screen. So I'm gonna just stop mine and see if I can move it all the way off so I can see my full screen. Tell me if you can still see the PowerPoint though. Can someone tell me if you can see the PowerPoint or not?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And now I'm gonna move you all the way off my screen so I can't see you all at all, so I can see the full screen. Okay, there we go. So the first question we started with was, hey, what are the pressing needs of your community? and you believe the board should address in your community. And of course, as many of us can imagine, housing, economic development, things for the youth, and resource centers. We need more resources. We need more assistance. These were what we call tier 1. All these things came up in all 10 meetings, all 9 neighborhoods plus the additional meeting. Now the tier 2 meetings, these are meetings that occurred in 9 of the 10 meetings. So this is food, health and wellness, as well as neighborhood infrastructure. And then the final one is crime. It came up in 7 of the 10 meetings. Oops. This is just another way of looking at the same chart. So 100% of the meetings, housing, jobs, and economic development, youth initiatives, resource centers. Of course, in 9 of the 10 meetings, these food, health and wellness, as well as neighborhood infrastructure. So of course, as I shared earlier, housing came up in every meeting, housing, something dealing with housing. And housing was so intricate that I actually broke housing down into 2 different presentations. So housing, I have housing part 1, and these are the things that came up in 4 to 10 meetings or more. Then I have a housing part 2 I'll share with you in just a second. But of course, as you can see, looking at the slide, home ownership came up in 8 of the 10 meetings. Addressing this property tax incentive and rebates came up in 80% of the meetings. So you can see in the way it's written, many of these initiatives and many of these overarching pressing needs came up consistently throughout the meetings. And the second part of housing are things that came up, but not as frequently. So of course there was concerns, hey, can you provide assistance and financial assistance to help us rehabilitate our houses? That came up in 3 of the 10 meetings, all the way down to 1. There was one meeting where an individual said, hey, why don't we provide some incentives for the developers? I think there was more caveats to it, if I can remember correctly, but we did want to make sure we shared as much as we could and displayed as much as going on right here. The next one was economic development and employment. So in all 10 meetings, individuals wanted to ask about or wanted to suggest to the board, hey, one of the most pressing needs that we're dealing with right now has to do with economic development and housing. Like, we want jobs. Jobs came up. So economic development is not even including just jobs. But in all 10 meetings, individuals came to discuss how important jobs were for the residents in the West End. And you can see the others as we move forward. And I want to share one more thing about this one before I move on. So there's also one solely for youth. And you see where it says vocational training here? They came up in 7 of the 10 meetings. Vocational training, there's another group of individuals who suggested they need vocational training for the youth that was separate than this type of vocational training here. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out, because you're going to see vocational training again shortly. As you can see here, this is economic development part 2. There are also some other critical needs or some critical issues that came up, including transportation services that provide transportation. Some of them included, some of the talk or the suggestions included healthcare transportation. I know some included transportation for food, and of course, back and forth to and from their place of employment. Also, in 4 of the 10 meetings, individuals said, hey, we want you to focus on Black-owned or minority-owned businesses. So I think that was important to note. All the way down to in 1 of the 10 meetings, there was a suggestion that they should fund grant writing programs. So youth initiatives, in every meeting they talked and discussed the youth. In every meeting they discussed youth and the ways their partnership can work to enhance this, the plight of the youth and their affected community. In all 10 meetings, individuals were saying, hey, they gotta have jobs. I think jobs is the most important incentive that they suggested for the youth in all the 10 meetings. There are a couple of the others, including safe places for youth and safe spaces, entertainment options before and after school programs. I think it was very clear. I want to make sure I point out it was very clear. The citizens, the residents urged the board to impact the youth, to do things that would significantly enhance the plight of the youth. The next one, so here's a tier 2. So in tier 2, these are resource facilities. I'm sorry. Initiatives that came up in 7 I'm sorry, this is the last of tier 1. Resource facilities is the last of tier 1, I remember. Individuals were asking, hey, are there ways in which you can, help us with resources? Some of them were resource centers, others were facilities. You can see the different breakdown on the slide below. I will share that I do remember pointing out this purple one here. I don't know if y'all can see my mouse or not, but it says a resource house. There's several times that individuals, at least twice I remember, we also have it documented, that individuals said if there was just somewhere we can go to know all the different resources that we are eligible for. I just thought that was a significant point, and I know that's written in the report. Food. Food was a tier 2 because, and I really went back and searched, but it came up in all of the, in 9 of the 10 conversations, individuals talked about food insecurities. And many times individuals asked for grocery stores, and some of the meetings, I'll be honest, they were very specific. And some of the meetings, they were asking for the Whole Foods or the Publix. There are other meetings where the individuals were saying things such as, there was a grocery store in the past that didn't get the proper funding or the resources or whatever it might be, and it wound up failing. But I can't share with you all that they really want you all to address the food insecurities in the impacted area. So they want to address the food insecurities. So that came up, grocery stores the most often. And there are others shortly behind it, including a farmer's market, and then healthy and organic food options. Health and wellness. In 4 of the 10 meetings, individuals discussed the foul odor in the West End and asked the board, or urged the board, I should say, to do something about the foul odor in the West End. This came up in several of the meetings, including the final meeting. And some of the other issues, a little bit not as much, including environmental safety, and then an emergency preparedness plan came up in 2 of the meetings. Neighborhood infrastructure. And just to show you how timely this is, I'm giving you an opportunity to read it, but just to show you how timely this is, I know in one of the meetings, there was a resident who, urged the board, hey, do something about Muhammad Ali's childhood home. Do something about Muhammad Ali's childhood home. I think she mentioned it a couple of times in that meeting. And she explained how his childhood home was right there in her neighborhood. And a couple of months later, I think it's recently sold. And the reason that's important, because there are other reports and there are other things out there, and nothing against any of the other reports or anything else out there, but I want you to understand that things are consistently and constantly evolving. And this is one that, like I say, 2 months ago she was saying, hey, let's do something about that. And I read the news, I think a week or so ago, discussing how they were doing something about it. Another one is the 19th or 18th in Broadway, the Passport Building.
Yes.
This is another initiative that came up in several of the meetings. The individuals were saying, hey, do something about this. What can y'all help us with? And I think, and my understanding is I think last week, they announced that they were doing something with this building. So it shows you the timeliness of some of these, just how critical it is that individuals are telling you all their pressing needs right now. I'll go kind of quickly through the last couple is crime and safety. Of course, they asked, you know, I mean, consistently, hey, let's eliminate violence. Let's eliminate violence. What can we do? What can the partnership do to help eliminate violence? It came up in many of the meetings, and some of the resident offers of advice. I mean, one resident said, you know, she was persistent. I remember one of the earlier meetings, she said, hey, we want lights in the alley, cameras or lights or something she wanted in the alley. But she wanted to make sure that individuals were not able to continue the behavior that they were displaying in, you know, the alley behind her house. It's just something I think is so important. I know I remember writing about that in the report regarding her neighborhood. But crime and safety. There are a few other miscellaneous that I could not, you know, I chose not to, because I say, when I find like a common cluster for them. But whereas they asked for funding for youth earlier regarding helping youth with before school, after school care. And this one, some of the individuals said, hey, we want many scholarships. And I'm assuming this is for all ages. I mean, I know at some of the meetings they were discussing this being important for individuals who to go back to school, meaning that it wasn't solely for the youth. But there are some of the others. I know one that I thought was interesting is there, you know, a couple of the meetings, the individuals said, hey, we want dry cleaners. You know, we want dry cleaners, things of that nature. So these are visual graphs of the report. I'm going to finish with this one. But of course, this is all written, I should say, in the report, in more detail about these conversations. Special populations. I asked them, hey, are there any special populations that the board should consider? And you can see, you know, in 5 of the 10 meetings, elderly population came up. How houseless brothers and sisters came up in many of the meetings as well. You know, you can just see as it continues to go down and down. They're asking for special populations, and these are the individuals they thought to be considered as the board decides to start allocating the funds. All right, so we go to lessons learned. I asked them, and one of the questions said, like, what are some of the things or initiatives that were handled poorly in the past, and what can the board do? What can this current board learn from some of those initiatives? And you know, I just pulled a few of those out of the for this report. I mean, for this presentation, I should say, not for the report. But they talked about some of the, I guess you would say, ideas that were intended to be well intended, but had very poor consequences. And they talked about these two in particular in some of the meetings. Another lesson learned, they said, hey, you know, there were so many failed promises. There were failed promises. And then they would, you know, give a business or a developer so enough funds just to allow them to fail. I think in one of the meetings I remember saying something of that nature. There's another point in one of the meetings where individuals said, you know, there's a grocery store, we just didn't have the appropriate assistance. They didn't have the appropriate funding. And, you know, it was one of the grocery stores that many of us were using that eventually shut down. So they were very concerned about failed promises. And then, you know, they just consistently talked about previous initiatives that were poorly implemented and urged the board to learn from many of those initiatives. And you'll see that in during the report. The advice to the board, here we go. All right, so the first one, of course, I don't have to, I mean, I'm preaching or teaching or talking to the choir when I say this, but, you know, oftentimes individuals outside of the West End treat the West End as though it's a monolith, you know, as though one size fit all policy will work for the West End. And that's simply not the case. If anything, the support, it shows that, you know, while there are some overarching needs, there are also some very distinct needs. And I think doing it the way we did it, going into each neighborhood and asking every neighborhood, hey, what's important to you all? And then even during the meetings, we allowed everyone to speak during the meetings, but we will make sure we focus the first part of the meetings on individuals from the neighborhood, because we want to hear from the individuals in the neighborhood. And we learned that individuals, you know, they're not a monolith. As a matter of fact, I'll give you one quick example. During the last neighborhood meeting, I think it was, Park Hill, I believe it was Park Hill. The individual, one of the individuals said, we're always last. We always get treated last. Although we're the West End, you know, y'all, you know, even you all coming to us last at the last meeting is indicative of how you think about us. And I assured him, you know, I wouldn't dare think like that. And that's the reason. And it shows why it was so important for us to do it like this, and why it was so important for us to go neighborhood by neighborhood, because we needed to hear that, whether it was true or false. it was true to him, and he felt that. And he felt that, and you know what? He probably was just expressing how many of his neighbors feel. And so my first piece is, understand that the West End is not a monolith as you're allocating funds. Secondly, in all 10 meetings, the residents were very concerned about advising the board, listening to the board. And in my advice later on in the report, I kind of write out some of those concerns. But two of the concerns, or two of the most pressing needs I know that came up consistently was, hey, partner with those nonprofit and those religious organizations who are already doing the work. Partner with the people who are consistently doing the work. And also make sure that you spend the money the way the community suggested. So one of the things I've done was when I stepped back, I try my best to include and incorporate as many of the suggestions as possible in the report. And hopefully you all see that once you receive the final draft. Next steps, here we go. I'm gonna close down here and take questions. But next step, the residents were committed. Some of the meetings, of course, if you were there, some of the meetings were a tad bit heated. The people were just hurting and they were lashing out. But toward the end of every meeting, I would ask the individuals, I would say, hey, I understand, we didn't get through all the questions the way I wanted to. However, there is one thing that I really do want to make sure I get from this meeting. And in every one of the 10 meetings, all 10 meetings, I ask them, who are the people who are currently doing the work? Who are the organizations currently doing the work? Who's doing the good work that the board should partner with or help, do it in any type of way to ensure that they are, being supported as they continue to do this great work. And these were what I call the unsung heroes. So I urge you, please do not ignore those unsung heroes, because in every meeting, some meetings we were able to go through all the questions, and other meetings we were not. But in every meeting, the individuals told us the people they want us to partner with, I want the partnership to partner with as they move forward. And then finally, the residents, were kind of similar. Do not reinvent the wheel. Just do not reinvent the wheel. There's so many organizations, and they talked about so many of these organizations who are doing this great work. And they want you to work with these organizations and help these organizations. Even I know in some of the meetings they just say, "Hey, partner with the neighborhood association or partner with this group." I know one, and I'm not going to get into it right here, but just off the top of my head, I know there's an organization called Ag in the City. As I stop sharing here, there's an organization entitled Ag in the City, and the individual will say, "Hey, partner with them. They're doing some really good work." And I don't want to. I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to start, privileging some over the others over this venue. But I will say, I'm sorry, I'm trying to come back over here. There we go. Yeah. I will say that that's one I know. Please consider those unsung heroes as we move forward.
Let me ask you really quickly, Dr. Rollins, before we start talking in detail about the report. Do you have a one-page summary that lists all of those larger focus topics that came out of the neighborhoods? I know we went through each of the slides. Each slide had a major heading. Do you have one slide that has each of those major headings on it? Because that would let us know.
Have an executive. He has an executive summary.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I can
Is
show
it
you.
in there?
Let's put that.
I
I was just going to suggest maybe we should put that slide up because it will kind of help to focus our attention. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Either one of these.
Yeah.
I can just take this now.
Yeah, because this has the major topics.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
So I can't see you all. So you have this. Let me see.
Housing, employment, economic development, resources, and the health and wellness.
So these, if you all can y'all see my pointer on here?
Yes.
Okay, so these four: housing, economic development, youth, resource centers, they were mentioned in all 10 meetings. Tier 2 include food, health and wellness, neighborhood infrastructure. Those were mentioned in 9 of the 10 meetings. And then crime was mentioned in 7 of the 10 meetings. And this, I'm sorry. I guess this one is, I don't know which one you'd rather have, Laura. Just tell me to go.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It just shows the exact amount of the meetings.
Yeah.
You tell me which one you want, and I'll just. we can go from there.
Yeah, this will work because I think
Okay.
it fits more easily on the screen.
Okay.
Uh-huh. I just wanted us to be able to see those major categories during our
Thank you. I
discussion.
understand.
'Cause
Okay.
that's the overall feedback from the folks in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay.
Dr. Rollins, I know in our preview when we met the other day, and I want to make sure that this is, when you talked about food insecurities, you said this was out of 9 of 10 of the meetings, but you made a notation or you shared that in the one meeting that it didn't come up is because we had a distraction. Is that correct? And
That's
that
correct.
if we, okay, and that had, I think there was some emergency in somebody's neighborhood, but,
Mhm.
and we kind of got off point because the point you were making is that it would more than likely have been in 100% of the neighborhoods with regard to food insecurities. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It was Algonquin Parkway. I don't want to call
Yes.
the individual name, although I know his
Yes,
name.
right.
He had
Yeah.
a death at his rental property. And so
Yes.
he explained it during the meeting, and he walked out and came back in the meeting, and he gave a lot of good advice that's included in the report. But I don't know. It was just my observation. I initially thought it came up in every meeting, but through reading through the notes, I did find it in the Algonquin Parkway. I'm sorry, Algonquin neighborhoods report. But I mean, of course, 9 of the 10 and 10 of the 10 are very close as well. So I think it's
Right.
and being that it came up in the overall meeting, the individuals want you all to address food and the food insecurities in the West End. I just, of course, couldn't, because I didn't have it in the notes that I received. I couldn't just put it in the report. I wanted to keep it as
Right.
fair and honest as possible.
Right.
And
So is it open up, anybody have any
oh, sure. I'm
questions
sorry.
at this
I thought
point?
that's what we were doing.
That's okay. Uh-huh.
Feedback, reactions, concerns.
And of course, what you've presented here, Dr. Rollins, is a synopsis of the report. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Basically,
Absolutely.
yes. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Because the full report will be more comprehensive with the narrative and everything. So just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that.
absolutely. So here it is. Here's the part. If y'all can you all see my screen?
Yes.
This is the
Yes.
Word document. I don't know if I can make it a little larger, but this is how the report reads. I'll make it as large as. This is the executive summary of the report. And I'll just kind of let you all, I'm going to go slowly scroll through because I'm going to kind of show you all some of the things, but the executive summary talks about, what we did, why we chose this path, how important, the type of research that we conducted, being focus group is, asking those open-ended questions as opposed to leading the audience or leading the residents. I think it's important that you all can say as you're making decisions, we asked them what they thought and they gave us, as opposed to we told them some options and they chose between those options. We asked them. So the way this report is written, it's written saying, hey, we asked them open-ended questions and then we clustered them after doing so. I'll just kind of go through the findings. This paragraph here talks about the findings. Housing, youth initiatives or so in all 10 meetings. Of course, you can see here food, health and wellness, and then infrastructure in 9 of the meetings, and then crime and safety in 7. Then later in this paragraph talk about the special populations and kind of go into it from there. And move down to a paragraph or so talking about the methodology. Then some of those same slides that kind of go in depth talking about the slides, discussing. And I'll just kind of skip through since we just kind of went through that. Finalize the slides. There's a bunch of them here, you all. Sorry. Okay, here we go.
No, that's okay.
All right, so we finished. I don't know what slide is this. Oh, this is miscellaneous, talking about, you know, the different things people ask for, miscellaneous things. And then here you can see I start a neighborhood specific analysis. So in each of the neighborhoods, I kind of went through, and I'm not prioritizing you, Mike. So don't think, you know, Portland is special. But I'm going to kind of go through Portland just so the rest of you I can kind of see, because Portland was indeed the first on the list. But we start, all of them keep the same format, but they kind of go through discussing what Portland thought, tackle the food desert in a second. Financial incentives for grocery stores came up in this one. They talked about, you know, eliminating urban blight. Fast forward. When asked about successful initiatives, here's Portland. They included the Table Restaurant. Wasn't that the restaurant, Mike? I think there was a restaurant we were, yep, they included the Table Restaurant. Blah, 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 and Habitat for Humanity. I just tried to go through here and really include and incorporate many of the things as I'm sorry, Mike, let me stop. I just saw your face. You know, oh, because your hand is up. I'm sorry, in my big point. And just kind of go through. So each of these neighborhoods, I'm just kind of go, I mean, a little quickly for y'all through Portland, but I went in the order in which we did them. So Park Duval, California, get down, Russell. Of course, that's yours. Who's Russell? Who's the Russell resident? Is
Dr. Gabe.
Gabe.
Gabe and Russell. Yeah, yep. Gabe, you can see. Let me just tell you one thing I remember about yours. Yep, here it is right here. This is what I want to talk about. They talked about somewhere in here. I don't know. I don't have it. I'm going too fast. But I know in Russell they asked the board to consider their Vision Russell. That's the Vision Russell transformation plan. So I remember them asking that and making sure they kept saying, "Hey, make sure you look at our plan as we go forward." You know, so I'm just sharing you all. If you're at those meetings, you can see I try my best to incorporate many of those things. I'm not gonna go through every one of them, but that we found in those meetings. Chickasaw all the way down. At the conclusion here, Park Hill, that's the last one. And then the final meeting, during the final meeting, I was able to ask the residents, I shared with them all the unsung heroes that came up in the other meetings. And I asked them, hey, you all, any additional ones? So they told us a couple of additional unsung heroes, you know, that were not listed. In addition, I asked them I asked the people, what did I ask them? Short-term initiatives, like short-term wins, and then long-term wins, explaining that, you know, hey, something that, you know, don't say they're unsuccessful because they couldn't, you know, do, you know, something, you know, within the first year. You know, what does success look like in the first year? And then I asked them for long-term. And I tried to put these into the report like this during the final meeting. I want to make sure we get that. In addition, they talked about, you know, the lessons learned. I shared some of these in the presentation, but these are just a few of the lessons learned. Some of the unsung heroes. They're listening on about. Here are my many of my notes from the last one. Hey, here's what Aaron, you know, here's overarching. Here we go. Housing. Do these things for housing, you all. Employment, food, additional advice. Let me tell you, I share with you all that in every one of the meetings, they were, you know, some of them were very critical, and I tried to include and incorporate them in my advice to the board. So this, as you all read this, I try to incorporate many of your critiques in this advice to the board. Then there's the appendices where I talk about, you know, the terms and the dates. So you can see, I think, what is it, 28 pages or so. 28 pages or so, just going, you know, from the overarching things with the graphs, and then later on, I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have my son here. Later on, neighborhood by neighborhood. Say it again.
Can't hear him.
Oh, good. He said this is really his time. Y'all butting in on his time. This is his time. I'm sorry. But neighborhood by neighborhood, and I try, you know, like as I said, you know, I know, you know, those are just two that came to me. So, Dr. Miller, I don't see you on here, but don't think I, you know, forgot about your neighborhood. But I mean, I just remember, you know, you know, Portland, you know, they said the Table Restaurant, do these, here's the things they reported. I remember it, you know, Gabe, I remember yours, you know, they said, hey, you know, you all owe us an apology. And I think that's in there somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but I put in that, you know, the individuals and your neighborhood, Gabe, said, hey, you all owe us an apology. Because that's what they thought was important enough to share with the board through me. And I tried to be as comprehensive as possible. Of course, it's not a verbatim, but it's not a verbatim report, but it's pretty, I think once you read it and get into your neighborhoods to go back and compare it, I think you're gonna find that it's about as comprehensive as it's gonna get. And I tried to be as objective as possible as we share the results of the neighborhoods.
Miss Sharon is
Sorry.
on here. Dr. Rollins, any particular thoughts on her neighborhood?
What was hers again?
Parkland, right? Or
Parkland.
Parkland.
Let me find 1 second here.
I don't think any of my people showed up.
That's why I asked him to comment, because I remember you telling me that, Miss Sharon. And so I know that Dr. Rollins probably has a positive nugget to share with you on something.
Yep. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want me to show it or just discuss it? Which one?
No, just your thoughts about
Oh,
anything
yeah.
that you could share with her about Parkland.
So they emphasize the greater police presence, particularly alleys, cameras in the alleys, to reduce illegal dumping and improve safety. They referenced the alley project. I remember that, the alley project. During that meeting, they called for projects to include Black-owned businesses that hire Black employees. I remember them being, here it is, they were concerned about the Passport building on 19th and Broadway, noting it as an eyesore. There's another conversation during that meeting. Revitalize a strip mall, retail businesses to restore the neighborhood's vibrancy from the civil rights era. You know, that came up during that meeting. Another thing, here's an important thing. The Parkland residents urged for a user-friendly application process. I think that's important for the board. They came up with a couple of the conversations. They said, hey, don't go ahead and do your application that's not, you know, easy for us to go, you know, to apply for these funds. That came up during your meeting.
Okay.
Just a couple of others, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It was
Did you
Parkland. Okay,
see-
here it is. I'm sorry, 1 second before I let you go. Is this Muhammad Ali's home? Yep, here it is. Is that the neighborhood Muhammad Ali's home? His childhood home is in Parkland?
Yeah.
Yep, I think that was it. Yep, y'all have it right here. I just found the notes. Here it is. It says they're suggesting allocating funds to restore Muhammad Ali's childhood home in Parkland, which would serve as both a tourist attraction and tribute to Parkland's native son. Yep, I have that right there. Talking about, yep, there you go.
I have a question, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
These things like the Muhammad Ali home, those things have already been addressed, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just got a letter in the mail from MSD about the smell. They've gotten so much money that they're supposed to be able to fix some of these drainages to eliminate the odor. It's a lot of residents on this letter, but it does not, Parkland is not one of them. And they gave a number that you can call to be added on this list. So you had mentioned the odor also in some of the meetings. So will this still be something that we look at, or do we just leave it alone for the MSD project?
So let me respond like this. So this, I want to make sure, this is a very good question you asked that. This was my taking notes from the meetings and sharing them with you all. And I was just trying to share with you all that I tried to be as comprehensive as possible from your meetings. And I mean, I know hopefully Gabe and the rest of the people who showed up to their community meetings can say, hey, you know what? I think he included it. I mean, about as close as you can get to a transcribed report. I'm sorry.
Let me add something, Ms. Allen. Since the neighborhood meetings were held and we could hear the feedback from people regarding the odor and their concern that MSD do something about it. We've had a couple of meetings with the folks at MSD, including the general counsel and the CEO, also their chief operating officer. And one of the things we're pursuing with MSD now is the possibility of working jointly to
Okay,
attract federal funds that can be used in West Louisville for odor mitigation.
Mhm.
Rita and I are identifying a grant writer with whom we can contract, who can search out those loans for us. And then we can be an applicant for the grant along with MSD and use those funds for odor mitigation because it's a big deal.
yes,
We know that even before getting the feedback from the folks in the neighborhood. The dilemma that MSD has is that if they take on a major project, it has to be financed by raising the rates that they charge people for
Mhm.
drainage and sewer services. And they just finished, I believe, sending through a rather significant rate increase. So they were very interested in the suggestion that we were making, that we work with them to
okay,
attract some funds, and that's going to be ongoing. And we'll plan to update everybody at our regular board meetings about how that process is going. But
Okay.
again, the partnership and MSD
Yeah.
have pledged to work together to identify federal funds that can be used for odor mitigation, and that the
Specifically.
partnership,
Mhm.
and that the partnership is going to be one of the grant applicants to get those funds.
okay, thank,
Yeah.
And that particular issue is not specific to one neighborhood.
Yeah.
That would be something that would be important across all 9 neighborhoods.
right, okay,
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
All right. Now I think Mike asked a question a while ago. I think I saw his question in the chat about what our next steps is the report finalized. If the folks on this committee don't have any additional questions or requested revisions, then Dr. Rollins is going to be prepared to do a report at the upcoming board meeting in the same way that he just did for us, to outline the findings of the neighborhood meetings. Ultimately, we want to publish a very nice report in terms of its appearance and its durability so that we can have copies available both online on our new webpage and available in hard copy for distribution to anyone who wants it. So the purpose of this meeting today is to get feedback from you guys as the community engagement meeting, to let Dr. Rollins and us know, is there anything that you think should be addressed that was not addressed? What needs to happen before the report is finalized, and how you would like to proceed from this point.
I mean, I can't give feedback on the report if I've not seen the report.
So Mike, you're saying you want a hard copy before you can provide feedback.
I mean, a digital one, yeah.
Okay, I think what we can have a draft of the report at the board meeting, and then to report out from the committee that you did have discussion with Dr. Rollins and an opportunity to talk with him about the report. It's not in its final format yet.
If the board's supposed to act upon it, I mean, it needs to be out there.
Yeah, so what I just said is the board will get a copy at the board meeting and have an opportunity to provide feedback before the report is finalized.
I know.
So are we gonna have time allocated in the meeting to give everybody time to read 32 pages of report?
Well, they don't have to do that in the board,
Right.
in the board meeting.
Right.
Once they get a hard copy of that report, then there'll be, they'll have what time they need to make their comments. We're not rushing to print it. We're anticipating that each board member is may ask questions in the meeting, but they may have their real questions after they have a chance to take the copy they get away and digest it. So it'll be discussed at another board meeting, not just at the one that's coming up
Right.
at the end of the month.
I guess it's important to remember that this will be like, the final draft copy that the board will get. And we also have to remember what Dr. Rollins and his team, their role was to get the information, get the feedback, so they are presenting exactly what the neighborhood residents communicated as their priorities, their issues, their concerns. So when it comes to feedback, I don't think there will be a huge push or the ability to change anything because he's reporting what the residents have said. Now, I think when you look at it and read it, you may have questions for clarification, but it won't be any of that editing based on what the residents have said, because what the residents have said is what's going to be communicated. But I think we're probably all on the same page with regard to that.
Then if the report's final, then publish it.
It's not final, Mike. That's what we're saying. It is not final until
missing?
the board, okay, what I just said earlier. This is the first time that this committee has had an opportunity to see or to discuss the report.
But we
It will
haven't.
be rolled out of the committee at the board meeting, rolled out from this committee to the full board. Everybody will get a copy and have an opportunity to digest it. There may be additional questions. There may be a section in the report where someone wants to see emphasized or clarified more. So the report is not going to be in final format until there's an opportunity for the full board to ask its questions and to have feedback. And again, the board meeting coming up at the end of this month is not the final and only opportunity for board members to do that.
Right.
Do we need to
Will be the-
prepared to, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I was gonna say, do we need to be prepared in that meeting so once the board has a draft of the document, do we have any further guidance that we want to give folks with regard to a timeline to give feedback?
Yeah,
that we
what
have
does the
another-
committee, what would the committee like to do in that regard?
As far as the timeline for feedback?
Yes,
So,
The 24th is the board meeting. The board will get the first full draft at that point. And so how much time? A week? 5 days, a week, 10 days? What do you think is a good turnaround time for people to review? Those who have any feedback, to give them a deadline to get back.
I mean, I don't want to,
I got a question on that.
go ahead, Chris.
Well, so are we expecting, I don't think we're expecting too many changes per se, but if it's going to be a 32-page document, are we going to have another meeting next month?
Yes,
mhm.
another board meeting,
So
yes.
could we just,
Oh, committee meeting as well.
well then, so yes, I would say that we would ask them to get it back to us before our next engagement committee meeting.
Okay,
And if we know what that date is, then they have to get that back to us so that we can address whatever issues that they have. And will Dr. Rollins still be able to be available to us for that?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
so. But that would be my suggestion, just make sure they
Okay.
get it to us before the next engagement committee meeting.
Okay. Is that agreeable with everyone? Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay,
I think that makes
Well,
sense.
let me
I think that
Let me
allows a
look
good
at the
amount of time.
calendar. I'm just trying to think ahead here with regard to, so the board meeting is the 24th. The next Community Engagement Committee is the 15th of July. So that would give them 3 weeks to review that report. Now, it's not completely 32 pages of just narrative. So, I mean, is it reasonable to expect that it would take 3 weeks, maybe a couple of weeks to review? Because we do want to get the report prepared, you know, for its final binding and that sort of thing. And we would want some time to do that. If we wait until the 15th, then we're looking at either the next board meeting, either probably the 29th, because the 22nd isn't going to work. So it'd either be the 15th or the 29th. The 15th is community engagement. So it probably would not be a good idea to try to do community engagement on the 15th along with board meeting because they clash in terms of time. So I'm just kind of thinking about getting the final product ready with regard to some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. I'm just putting that on the table for us to think about.
Mhm. So does the committee want to just say 2 weeks from the board meeting? All feedback should be in.
Is that reasonable?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I think in addition to that,
That's
if
fine with
anybody-
me.
okay.
What'd you say, Dr. K?
I was just gonna say, and we could also just have sort of the caveat that if anybody needs additional time to let us know that. So that we know
Yes.
there are folks who, you know, will have that outstanding for a bit longer. Just so everybody feels like they have enough time to thoroughly digest it because yeah, there's a lot there. And I appreciate that, by the way,
Okay.
Dr. R. And like I said, you put
Okay.
a lot of work in. Shoot,
So
it's
I did
already
have an
7:05.
additional question.
Go ahead.
And Dr. Gabe, are you comfortable when you give your committee report, rolling this out and making that statement? That we've scheduled 2 weeks to get feedback, but if anyone wants additional time, please just let you know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So as far
Okay.
as rolling it out, and Mike, I think I heard you say you got a question.
Yeah.
I'll be
So
right there.
what-
So hold on, let me finish one thing
Purpose.
really quick. So as far as when you said rolling that out, Laura, did you mean to talk
Oh.
about the report broadly or to talk about the contents of the report? Sort of like Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I meant is when you give your report at the board meeting for the committee, what I'm anticipating happening is that you are going to tell everybody that Dr. Rollins did the presentation, that you
Right.
have copies of the report for all board members to review, and then to have their comments back to the committee in 2 weeks, and then to add that if anyone needs additional time to let you know. Are you comfortable with saying that?
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I'm curious what the purpose of having them printed and binded and what the cost of that is expected to be.
We don't know the cost yet, but given the importance of the report, we know that this is going to be something that lots of people will want to have, that it's going to live on our webpage, that we want to be able to forward it to our funders and to other friends throughout the community. It's a nice bit of information. And think in terms too of the discussions that we had at some of the neighborhood meetings where lots of folks, particularly those from Russell, were talking about the reports that have already been done in neighborhoods. And I think Dr. Gabe provided a link for us to see some of those reports. They are very well laid out and presented. So it's important for us to have a good looking work product. You know, it imparts a bit of seriousness. It says we've approached this task seriously. And it also helps us to be on par with other organizations in the city that have already done some in-depth reports. Because they're not just pieces of paper stapled together. They're well developed and presented.
And it's also important for people to remember and understand that in terms of our particular task, this is a legislative task that was required as the last step before the partnership could begin to start working on the investments in the neighborhood. We're not competing with other reports. We're not trying to use other reports' formats. Our task was to go out into the neighborhoods and to understand from the residents what they see as their particular priority from their perspective in the neighborhood. So I think that's important to remember as well. And so we get this to the board, like I said, on Monday, the draft, couple of weeks for the board members to review and digest and provide any kind of feedback that they might have. And then we move on to the next steps, if that makes sense to everybody. Ms. Sharon, what do you think? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I apologize for closing my eyes, but I still hear you all.
No, I could not see you. Now you told on yourself because I
Yeah.
can't see your eyes being closed.
Yes,
Okay,
great.
okay, okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Chair Jones?
Yeah, so mine, I have yeah, just a couple of comments more than questions. So if anybody
Yes.
else has questions, please.
I think you're good to comment.
Okay, okay, cool. So some of my comments really represent like agenda items, hopefully for our next meeting, because I know we are already 10 minutes over for tonight. But one of the things that we all need to be thinking about right now is how best to disseminate information regarding the neighborhood nomination process once that process is sort of concretized. So we will need to work in collaboration with board development and the communications committee so that the neighborhoods can nominate folks and so that folks can self-nominate. We have seats expiring, one of which you all know is mine, which I'm happy to continue, but that will have to be up to the process. Another thing is for us to start to consider and think about in advance of our next meeting, how we continue this work and push this work forward. And to me, that means how we plan regular or continued community engagement and what that will look like, what that will take from a capacity standpoint. And so if you all could be thinking about those in advance of our next meeting, I happen to think that it's going to mean enhancing our capacity because I think some of the things that we will need to do may be beyond what us as individual board members can do. So I'm hoping we can have that on the agenda. And then just accessibility, both of the information in this report and the accessibility of really everything that we have going on, which I know we've talked about a piece of that being the website and the redevelopment of the website, which is going to be big for us, but especially with this report coming out, I think we need to spend time thinking about how we contextualize the report, how we make the report accessible to other community organizations like Laura was saying, how we make the report accessible to community members themselves. And so I think those three things are just really big for me and just follow up to this. And Ms. Rita, I'll send those over to you so that hopefully we can have those on the agenda for the next meeting. But yeah, I know we're well over
Okay.
time. I think once everybody has the report to review, that'll be a good thing. And again, shout out to you, Dr. Rollins, for crafting the report. I think when I heard you talking through things, there were many things that you were saying that I remembered from being at the meetings.
Yes.
And so like my presence there, I was like, yep, remember that. Yep, remember that. Yep, remember that. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the time that you put into this.
No, I appreciate it. May I say one quick thing? I see in the chat there was someone asking me about Ali's money. I just wanted to say that just goes to show you. I just wrote in the report is saying what the community member said. It's not. I'm not saying spend money on Ali's home. I'm just saying that the report simply displays exactly what the community, as close as possible to what the community members were saying, and that's what I'm sharing with the board in this report. So that's it's not my thoughts.
Yeah.
It's just the thoughts from the community members during that at that time.
And Dr. Rollins, with regard to each individual neighborhood, I know that
Yes,
there's been some maybe questions about whether there would be an individual report for each neighborhood, but that is not what we're doing in this comprehensive report. We're within the report, you're reporting on the feedback from each individual neighborhood based on the tasks that we have, but there
Right.
will not be a separate report for each neighborhood. It's a part of the overall comprehensive report. Is that correct?
That's correct. Let me explain. I mean, that would be a lot of more work. Although we can
Exactly.
pull some of that from the data, but let me say something about that. That would be difficult to do for anyone, simply because the many of the neighborhoods we weren't able to go through all the questions in the order, and it was so I think a follow-up report would have probably allowed that. But this report, we just simply the data won't do that. It won't allow us to do that because some of the neighborhoods, and I'm not going to call names right now. That's not important.
Right.
But we just were not able to go through all the questions because the neighbor decided they wanted to take the conversation in another direction. And that's part of one of the drawbacks of qualitative type research. Whereas it has its positives, meaning you can go in depth. One of the drawbacks is the neighbors guided some of the conversations differently, so they don't all have the exact same questions being asked every time outside of the first question and the question that I shared earlier regarding the unsung heroes. So we got the pressing needs and we got the unsung heroes in every one, and many of the others we got a bunch of them. But that's one of the reasons you just cannot do that with this current, not with this current data. You can use it to enhance another one if you want to build on that, but you can't do that with this one. One of the limitations of this study.
Excellent. Dr. Gabe?
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I know we're over time. Does anybody else have comments, questions, concerns at this point? Okay. Shoot, how do I say it? The matter. Oh, Mike, your screen turned yellow in the background, and I thought that was the hand popping up because it's in the same place the hand pops up on the computer. Mike tried to play me real quick. That's cool.
That's Google screensaver on my TV, and my hand's not that skinny. So
Nah, yeah, no, I mean the yellow Zoom hand. It popped up right there, and I just saw the yellow. Anyway, I moved to adjourn this meeting. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Dr. Gabe. Thank you all.
Night, everyone.
All
All right.
right.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.